Now, we start writing a program, and to think about what you're doing, you're actually starting at step one, and we're going in and actually laying out our application. So, step one is we're writing our code. Now, when I go in, let's say that the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to ask the user for their name. So, we're going to ask for their name. And once we get their name, we want to print hello Bob or whatever it is that they told us their name. So print name. The problem that you have, if you think about it, is that you're writing a program that is going to ask for information from the user, but we need to somehow remember what the user answered. We need to be able to hold on to that information and to be able to use it at a later date. In order to do that, we have to have something referred to as a variable. Now, in programming languages, there are languages that are referred to as typed languages, and there's languages that are untyped. Now, the untyped languages would be something like Python, PHP, Perl. Those languages don't really care about the type of variable that you're working with. Languages like, for example, C and C++ and Java and Go, these are all typed languages, and Objective-C. What that means is that in order for me to declare a variable called name, I know that this is going to hold characters. It's going to hold a string, what's referred to as a string. So in PHP, I could do something like this. I could say that this would be PHP. I would say var name equals, and we'll just, to make this easy, we'll just say quote, and we'll say Bob, quote. So I've declared a variable called name, and I've set it equal to Bob, and I don't really even have to have this. When I do this, it'll still, the PHP system will say, okay, Bob is a string because I've set it equal to something in quotes. But in PHP, I could turn right around and say name equals 5, and I have now converted this name variable into a number. Now, on the surface, especially doing web development and that kind of stuff, this type of a language, this untyped language, is very fast for programming. It's extremely fast for going in and writing an application, because I do not have to be concerned about what type of variable I'm working with. I just go in, set it to whatever I want to set it to, and then add it or concatenate it or whatever it is that I'm working with, and PHP figures out what it is that I'm dealing with at the point of execution. So it's very fast for me to go in and write code. The problem with this language, though, is that I don't have any way to make sure that I have the right type of data in that particular variable. I have no casting or typecasting. So what a typed language does, as opposed to something that's not typed, is, let's take a look at what we would look at in C++, for example. I would come in and I would say, I'm going, and we'll keep it simple here. Let's forget the language. But I'm going to say that I have a string variable, and I'm going to call it, v1, and I'm going to set it equal to hello. So this, in this case, I have basically, using the string keyword, I've told the compiler that v1 is always going to hold a string. So if I later come down here and said v1 equals 5, that this is going to actually cause a compiler error. So when I try to execute or try to compile this code, I am going to get an error at that particular point. Now, why is that useful? Well, the one thing is that this code up here is only going to happen, I'm only going to have a problem at runtime. So I'm only going to find, if I do have a problem, I am going to only find the problem when that program is running. And that might be a situation where, it's supposed to show the user's name, but all of a sudden it starts showing numbers. And I don't know why, I don't know where that happened, but now I've got to go hunt it down. where in a typed language, this type of a language, we actually find this out at compile time, which is actually, before the user actually knows what's going on. So, before we even send the program to the user, we've already found out that we made a mistake and set that variable or tried to set that variable to the wrong type of information. So really the only difference between typed and untyped is just the fact that you're telling in a typed language, you're telling the system ahead of time what is legal to put inside that variable. And in an untyped language, I can literally put anything I want to in the variable at any point in time. There really is to me, there's no downside with or upside with either one. They're just different things. They have different ways of working with them. But both languages, PHP is just as functional as a programming language as C is, for example. They're just different ways to handle different things. But and the compiled language does allow you to check things and to make sure that you're working with the correct things ahead of time. The downside to the typed variables or the typed languages are it takes more time to write the code, because I literally have to check everything. I've got to make sure that I'm not doing anything wrong up front. So it typically takes longer to write a C program, for example, than it would a PHP program. A PHP program can be written in a tenth the amount of time it would take to write the same program in C, probably just because of that one aspect. There are other advantages that you'll see as we go through this course, but the primary point I'm trying to make here is that variables, you have to have them. Every programming language has variables. It's just whether or not the programming language refers to it as a type or whether it just has a variable and you can put anything you want to in it. And typically scripting languages are the only ones that are untyped that you can put anything you want to in them.